Welcome to Lifestyle Solopreneur, the community for entrepreneurs who put lifestyle first. Join your host Flavia Barris as she interviews successful lifestyle solopreneurs and shares ideas to help you find the perfect balance between lifestyle, business, and self. Flavia is an attorney, marketing expert, and founder of several online academies. She's been featured in major media, including BBC World News, The Wall Street Journal, The New York Post, ESPN Television, and more. Join us for this episode of Lifestyle Solopreneur.
Hey, Lifestyle Solopreneurs. Today we are speaking with Dana Humphrey. She is a life coach and a death doula. She can be found at danahumphrey.com. She helps others identify the root of their patterns from family life and how these patterns may be showing up in love and partnership and in your work. She launched a PR company for pet product manufacturers way back in 2007 called Whitegate PR, still running that. And she has been a guest on TV stations across the country from NBC to CBS to ABC to Fox, known as the Pet Lady. She was born in Canada, raised in London, and grew up in Northern California. She identifies as a global citizen of the world, currently resides in Rockaway Park and on the beach in Queens in New York City. Welcome to the show, Dana.
Wow, thank you so much. What a fabulous introduction. I appreciate that.
Well, it's great to have you. And I love when people are multi-passionate or multi-niche. I mean, there's so many different ways to call people like us. I mean, I am part of that tribe too. I do lots of different things. Longtime listeners know I do law. I'm a real estate broker. I'm a real estate investor. I teach. I do all sorts of things. And it sounds like you are one of my people. You are working in life coaching. I want to know exactly what a death doula is. I think that's fascinating. Never heard of that before. And I'm sure people want to hear that as well. And then more about your PR company and how you manage to do all of those things at the same time and still have time for a life. So give it to us. Give it to us from A to Z. How did you start your journey and how did you end up where you are now?
Okay, well, so I'm originally from California and I grew up in the Bay Area and then I moved to San Diego to go to San Diego State University. And I was getting a degree in public relations. And at the time, my parents were moving to Thailand. And so our family dog named Winston moved in with me. So I was graduating college, getting a degree in public relations, looking for my first job, and I ended up working for a company called Muttropolis. And they're a pet boutique chain in Southern California. So it was perfect. I got to bring Winston to work with me, got to do PR and marketing. And so I really started my career in the pet industry. Then after a couple of years, I wanted to leave San Diego and I applied for a job in New York City and I got it. I moved here 2 months later. And that was in 2008. And so basically I got let go from that company pretty quickly on and decided to go full time with Whitegate PR. And the first phone call I made was to a pet expert named Arden Moore. And I said, hey, I'm going to be doing PR full time. Do you know anyone who might be looking for a PR expert? And she said, I am. And she hired me on the spot. So when I started the PR business, most of the connections I had were in the pet industry and in the pet space. So we kind of quickly started to specialize in the pet industry, all of our clients being pet product manufacturers or pet experts. And along the way, I would position them for doing TV segments. We would get our pet product clients featured in TV, radio, magazines, newspapers, and blogs. And a lot of them were inventors. They found a niche in the marketplace and they created new items for pets and their pet parents to enjoy. And so I was pitching them to TV segments. And a lot of them were not doing a good job. They were forgetting their websites. They were forgetting their important information. They were stuttering. We would do media training and they just didn't have a knack for it. You know, they were really good at like inventing this thing, but they weren't that good at explaining it. So I was doing a TV segment in Fresno, California, and they introduced me as the pet lady. And there they have the something lady for everything. They have the plant lady, they have the car lady. And so I took the pet lady and ran with it. And I got the trademark, I got the website, and I started positioning myself as a pet expert, as the pet lady, so that I could go on TV and do different TV segments talking about tips and tricks for pet owners. So I was traveling a lot, going all around the country, doing TV segments for different holidays, whether it was National Pet Day or Halloween, doing a Halloween pet fashion show, and also ended up getting a regular segment on NBC in Connecticut where I would go once a month as the pet lady and bring my favorite products or my favorite things for each season. And really in the last 2 years, I'd say I started working with a life coach and really kind of honed in on my passion. And last May, I was in Guatemala during the pandemic and I ended up shaving my head. I used to have long brown hair and I shaved my head as a reminder to myself to live in right livelihood and to really follow my dream and my purpose to do life coaching and death doula work. And so I shaved my head as a reminder to myself to not be a marketer anymore. So I'm currently doing everything. I'm writing a book. I'm running the PR firm. I'm still the pet lady. I'm launching a life coaching business. I'm reaching out to do death doula work. And I'm in a transition phase where I'm going to be selling the PR company. I'm going to be selling the pet lady so that I can focus more on the life coach and death doula work and put out a memoir that I've been writing for the past couple of years as well.
Wow. So we caught you right in this moment of transition. I mean, this is
Yes.
a huge time for you. It's like you're considering closing this chapter, the pet lady chapter, and now you're going towards this new chapter, which symbolically, I mean, death doula, in some ways, you are sort of sunsetting a part of your life that's been a huge part of your life. So tell us a little bit about what a death doula is, what that career looks like, and how you made that decision.
Sure. Well, a death doula really adds ritual back into the dying process. We work with people who are in hospice. So that means that they've been maybe given 3 to 6 months to live. They're living at home and they're having at-home hospice care. That is the perfect time for someone to talk to a death doula. And basically, we make sure that the patient's rights are advocated. So more from a spiritual perspective, we're not giving any medicine or giving any pills or anything like that. We're really listening to the person, understanding what their wants and desires are for when they transition into the active dying process and what their legacy is and what they'd like their family to and friends to be like. There's a lot of different things that we can offer. Sometimes when someone's in that environment, they can be in a lot of pain. So we offer guided visualizations to kind of walk them through and have a little bit of an escape from that. We also, meet with them on their good days and hear about their life and help them grieve some parts of their lives that are no longer active anymore so that when they become into the medical state of the active dying process, which can take anywhere from 1 to 7 days, that they can let go easier because they've talked through some of their grief of letting go of some of the parts of themselves. We also think with them about set and setting. Someone might want more of a party atmosphere, while some others might want more of a quiet, gentle space. So we think of different things together that people can do that would fit the right set and setting and mood that they'd like to have in their room. So for example, one thing that people like is like having a gratitude chair. So maybe someone came on the subway or in traffic or driving and they are bringing that hectic energy with them. They can take a moment, sit in a gratitude chair and be just reminded to like take their shoes off quietly and enter the room in a state of calm gratitude. That could be a simple request that every guest is given so that they're not rushing in with their hectic energy, that they're coming in from a nice, tranquil place. And that can really help the vibe in that room. So we're all about adding ritual and making sure that the vibe is what the person wants for their final hours. It's also talking with them and the family and seeing when it comes down to the final breath. Who do they want to be there? Who do they maybe not want to be there? It could be that they had set some things in motion 40 years before and they thought they wanted to be buried in a particular gravesite. And maybe that has changed and they have new thoughts about what they want to do. Maybe they now want to be cremated. Maybe that's a hard conversation for them to have with their family who have very specific religious values and requests. So we kind of act as a mediator to help them have those conversations if they expect that there might be some pushback. We can also help the family make certain decisions based on what we know the will is of the dying person so that they have less remorse and less decisions to make when they're going through their own grieving process.
What amazing work. And in your time doing this, is there anything that you have noticed or learned about people in their final moments that came as a surprise?
I think that what happens is a lot of times the dying person is really ready to go and they've made peace with that decision and they've made peace with that outcome. And the families often struggle more with that piece. So sometimes it can be helpful for the family members to seek additional help to get through their own grieving process. And they might be facing death for the first time and really contemplating that for the first time and that letting go. And I think it's important and helpful to have a third party outsider that's not part of the family helping to initiate some of those conversations.
That makes perfect sense. I've recently read a book. It's fabulous. I recommend it to everyone. It's called Being Mortal. And Being Mortal was written by a doctor who was not particularly an expert in palliative care and sort of end of life care. He was, I believe, a surgeon or some other kind of doctor, but he became very curious. And so he started interviewing. It's written almost as a documentary book with interviews with lots of different people who are in that stage of life and also their doctors and also their families. And in it, he shares some of his own experiences and stories. And it's just so well written and researched. I recommend it to anyone who's listening to this episode of the podcast and is really finding themselves drawn to learn more about palliative care, death doulas, kind of those final moments, and mortality as a theme, as a philosophical question. Because it's interesting, right, that every single one of us does have death at the end of our timeline. It's inevitable. I mean, that's the one thing that we know for sure we as a person will experience at some point. But for some reason, the further away your anticipated death is, the less people seem to stress about it. I mean, often we talk about how teenagers and 20-year-olds have no sense of death and they're out there doing parkour or, these crazy things because they really don't see themselves or imagine themselves passing anytime soon. And they kind of feel invincible. And then, everyone has the typical midlife crisis, whether it's mild or serious, but everyone sort of faces that moment where you realize there's like less sand left than has already passed through the hourglass statistically, or more than likely. But yes, as you get closer and closer, it is probably your perspective changes. But it sounds like you're saying that you find when their sand is sort of almost out and they really kind of see that proverbial light at the end of that tunnel, that they seem to be less stressed and anxious and concerned about it and maybe more worried about their family and some of these other things. But so do you find statistically in your work, do you think most people are at peace when they're dying and it's something anticipated, or most people are resistant and really pushing that inevitable end away and really trying to fight it?
That's a really interesting question. The more resistance that people have, the longer and more drawn out that week goes. If they're at peace with it, the active dying process happens quickly. And when there's a lot of resistance, it could take a whole week. And it's kind of like what we say, even in our conversational language to each other, is we hope that it's like a quick, painless death. And that's like something that we, as a society, we kind of like say to each other. That's something that's like said, I hope it's quick and painless. So when that resistance is dropped, we're more likely to be in that state of quicker and potentially less pain. So I think it's an interesting question, but there's a range. People sometimes they're more likely to want to hang on and have it take a little bit longer.
And how do you stay centered and keep yourself positive? Because it can be very sad. Your work can be sad how have you found a way to process that? I mean, do you feel that sadness and you work through it? Or have you become immune to the sadness because you now see death as more of a transition and less of a sad ending?
I think it's really important to stay present and then in each moment, especially while doing that work, because it's really just you and the patient and whatever their needs are, and staying present with that. For myself, the way that I clear myself of different emotions and things, the way I clear my energy is with dancing. And dancing is a really important part of my self-care that I have to do weekly. I pretty much, during this pandemic, I have found here in New York some outdoor dance parties that happen in the park that are socially distanced with masks, and just being able to move my body and move the energy is the way that I stay sane.
And how do these clients find you? Because I'm imagining people that are either in the hospital or hospice or in palliative care or maybe at home, but if they're kind of nearing the end of their life, I don't think they're out there Googling services or, cruising Facebook, or maybe they are, correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm curious, is it the doctors that refer you? Is it the family members that find you? Is it the client primarily that find you? Or is it estate planning attorneys that refer you? I'm very curious for somebody else that's listening saying, wow, what I'm hearing from Dana is my calling. I want to do this kind of work too. And maybe there's a shortage of people providing this work. It sounds like a really important service. I'm not sure how saturated that market is or if there's opportunity or room for people to start providing this service in their locality. But how would you get started? How would you actually find the clients? And who pays for the service? Is this covered by insurance? Is it covered by the family? I'm very curious. I am all ears.
So usually the spouse or the family is the one that seeks out the death doula. A lot of times it's word of mouth. Also, I live here in Rockaway. There's a few different hospice companies that are based here that I have partnerships with, but the hospice and the family are usually the ones to help arrange that. It is not covered by insurance. It is an out-of-pocket expense. And I would say if someone is interested in this, that the best resource to look at is INELDA. It's INELDA. It's the International End of Life Doula Association, and they are based out of New Jersey, and they have different online trainings that people can do. The trainings used to be in person in New Jersey, and now it's actually, because of the pandemic, it's opened up to Zoom and is maybe more accessible to people in different areas around the country. Another thing that is a resource to check out if you're interested in this is to join a death cafe. And you can find those on meetup.com if you look for a death cafe in your area. And these are events that are held once a month. They're usually 1 hour long. They're usually hosted by a death doula or someone in that field. And basically, it's a 1 hour opportunity, either on Zoom or in person, to talk about grief, to talk about dying, to talk about death, to talk about the afterlife, thoughts, projections, whatever is coming up for people. If they've maybe lost someone, or they think they're going to lose someone, or they're just thinking about death for the first time, it's an open conversation where anything goes. And that can be a good place to kind of start, is to join a death cafe, maybe check out INELDA and go from there.
Great resources. Thank you for sharing all of that. Do you find that your PR background in getting yourself on local TV for the pet lady stuff has really also helped you to promote yourself and to have a really good PR plan in place for your death doula services? Have you gotten on TV yet, or is this still fairly new and you're still building that business up?
That's a good question. It's like the shoemaker's kids don't have any shoes. When it comes to doing PR for myself, I have been featured in a couple of different articles about the death doula work, but I have not done any TV around it as of yet. But it's a good reminder to me to think about that for that side of my world.
So I'm glad it came up, because that would be a really, I think, an easy sell to local television stations, producers, to say, I'm a death doula, this is what it is. And I'd love to come on and talk to people about this as a service, because there needs to be sort of more visibility that this is an option. Because to me, I mean, I'm an outsider here. I'm not in the industry, but hearing everything you're saying, my thinking is, wow, every single person who is in this position, this stage of their life, should have an advocate like you who is non-family, so the conversations can be a little bit different, a little bit less emotional, a little bit more matter of fact, a little more strategy and planning. And it's fantastic. And I don't really know of that. You're the first death doula I've ever met. So I don't know how popular, or if this is like something where, 20% of people that are in palliative care or hospice already have this kind of service. I don't know. You tell me. But I think this is something that should be essential for every single person who's going through this.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you. I would absolutely like a death doula in my corner when that time comes, whenever that is for me. Death doulas have been growing in popularity over the last 10 years. However, there is much more awareness needed, and there's definitely room for more.
And then for your own life, what do you do for fun and what are your hobbies and passions? Because you've got to do something, I would think, to kind of pull yourself out of the sort of somber, very serious work that you do day to day and to sort of shake that off. And I know you love to dance. That's fantastic. Are there any hobbies like that in addition to dancing that you make sure you get in on a regular basis?
So I do have a hot yoga practice. I do practice hot yoga pretty much every morning. That's also a serious thing though. I would say one of my more fun hobbies is I make magic wands. So I live right on the beach. So I go for beach walks and I collect driftwood and I sand them and I paint them and I add gems and glitter and ribbons and all kinds of fun things to make magic wands for people. And I make custom wands based on certain colors that people like. And I also make wands that I sell. I give them to people. Some of them have feathers. And it's just for having fun, manifesting things, adding a little more magic to your day.
How fun. Absolutely love that story. I'm glad I asked because that's a great one. I love that you shared that. Thank you. And how do people get in touch with you? What are you promoting right now? I know you have your book coming up. Is there a place where people can go and sign up to be on the wait list for that book?
Thank you. Yeah, the best place to find me right now is at danahumphrey.com. That's where you can learn more about the book, about the death doula work, as well as the life coaching, and get in touch on social media or send me an email or send me a note that you listen to this show.
That's fantastic. Well, thank you so much for being on the show. I hope lots of listeners reach out to you. And definitely, I cannot wait to read that memoir. I think it sounds fascinating. And I'm glad I got to meet both the pet lady officially. You are a celebrity in that world, and I love it. And I also got to learn a lot about this career path that is a death doula and end of life doula. And I think that is a really interesting career path. And I'm pretty sure somebody listening heard that and found their own calling. And so thank you for making that transition for them possible as well by sharing your own story. Dana, it's been so wonderful having you on today.
Thank you so much.
Hey everyone, thank you so much for joining us, and I hope you enjoyed the show. Don't forget to subscribe to this podcast, and if you leave a review on iTunes, I promise I will read every single review. If you know someone who makes a full-time living from part-time work, and maybe this is you, please visit lifestylesolopreneur.com to nominate a guest or to nominate yourself. Because remember this, money doesn't buy happiness. But money in the hands of a happy person, there is no greater tool.
Today's episode was brought to you by the Get Shift Done program. It's a lifestyle-changing online class to help you define your business and lifestyle ambitions and to set goals in a way you've never experienced before. This class will 10x your daily productivity with methods that will blow your mind. And if you use a coupon code podcast, the class tuition is 99% off. Visit GetShiftDone.com to enroll today.